This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome to the program. Israel has flatly rejected an offer by Hamas for a conditional 6-month ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Hamas had said it would halt Palestinian rocket attacks on Israeli towns if Israel in return lifted its blockade of Gaza. But Israel says it's nothing but a ruse by Hamas to buy itself more time to regroup and rearm. Jackie Rowland reports now from Jerusalem.
The truce offer by Hamas calls for a mutual halt to hostilities in Gaza on condition that Israel ends its blockade. Under the deal, the truce would begin in Gaza and then be extended to include the West Bank at some point during the 6-month period. This follows consultations with Egyptian mediators and talks with the former US President Jimmy Carter during his visit to the region earlier this week. Israel, however, has dismissed the offer, calling it a ruse aimed at allowing Hamas to recover from recent fighting.
Israel is interested in peace. We feel Hamas is not serious. Hamas is trying to buy time in order to rearm and regroup and get ready for its next offensive against Israel. Israel will continue to take the necessary steps to protect its people.
Israel is also concerned about the firing of rockets and other activities by Palestinian factions, including Islamic Jihad and the Popular Front. The Israelis have expressed doubts in the past about Hamas's ability and even desire to contain these attacks. Leaders of the various factions are due to hold meetings in Cairo next week to formulate a common strategy.
Our offer comes after a series of operations against the enemy that forced Israel to ask for a truce. Israel is the party that sought the ceasefire, so anyone who says the truce is imposed on us and that we gave concessions is mistaken.
For now, Israel is watching closely and refusing to commit to any kind of deal. But should Hamas decide to implement a ceasefire unilaterally, then Israel may have to reconsider. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera, Jerusalem.
Meanwhile, hundreds of Palestinians have answered a call from Hamas to protest against the ongoing blockade of Gaza by Israel. David Chater reports from the Eretz Crossing.
A mass rally of protest called by Hamas about 1 kilometre away from the Erez crossing is now underway. They called it to actually show the conditions of people living under the siege here, the fact that fuel has now run out for the whole fleet of lorries that supply food distribution for the United Nations. They say that the siege is now actually corrupting and corroding every level of society here. So this is the occasion for the people of Gaza to come and make their protests to the international world and to the Israelis about the effects of the siege. And we've also just heard that the military wing of Hamas and Islamic Jihad have said they were behind the attack, the shooting on the outskirts of Tulkarem of 2 Israeli security guards.
Two Israelis were killed early this morning when a Palestinian terrorist opened fire at the Nitzana Shalom industrial complex near Tulkarem. According to the investigation, the gunman had initially intended to infiltrate Israel, but attacked guards at the industrial complex after failing to pass the security barrier. Islamic Jihad has taken responsibility for the attack. IBA's Ellie Wogelanter brings us the story.
The attack occurred around 7 o'clock this morning after a group of Palestinian laborers entered the Nitzana Shalom industrial zone. A lone terrorist then arrived and fired at the factory from the gate, killing 2 of the 3 guards. The terrorist then fled back to nearby Tulkarem. The 2 guards, Shimon Mizrahi, 53, from Beit Hefer, and Eli Wasserman, 51, from Alfei Menashe, were declared dead by a Magen David Adom team called to the scene. Wasserman's funeral is scheduled for Sunday at 3 p.m. in Netanya. The initial military inquiry into the incident showed that the guards did not respond properly, as none of them fired back at the attacker. One of the guards ran away when he heard the gunfire, another had his back to the terrorist and was hit immediately, and a third had left his gun in his car, said the IDF's commander in Judea and Samaria, Brigadier General Noam Tibon. We will investigate the incident to understand how 3 armed people failed to fire at the terrorist. Sources say that only a month ago, the guards had undergone a drill simulating a terror attack, which was aimed at preparing them for just such an assault. Islamic Jihad's Al-Quds brigades and Hamas's Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam wing both claim responsibility for the attack. They claim that the gunman was a terrorist wanted by Israel and the Palestinian Authority, who had escaped from a PA prison several days ago. Ben-Sion Gashuri, owner of the factory that was hit, said that a large group of Palestinians had entered the area with the Shin Bet's approval and that the terrorist was among the second group.
7 o'clock this morning, as usual, the group of workers have managed to start to come in. After the first group has entered, there was a small pause, and in the pause on between the 2 groups, someone came in and actually managed to murder 2 of the guards that have been waiting there to accept the normal workers that are coming every day into the factory.
المتابعون لعمليات حركة حماس الأخيرة في قطاع غزة توقفوا.
Observers of Hamas's operations in Gaza paused at the recent incremental progress of Hamas's military capabilities. Their operations have become more effective and more capable of reaching the Israeli soldiers and their defense, which has led to significant injuries among the Israeli army. The following report examines this incremental progress before we move on to discussing their causes.
التحول في العمليات المسلحة التي نفذتها حماس مؤخرا ضد أهداف إسرائيلية يظهر رغبة ربما.
The change in Hamas's recent armed operations against Israeli targets shows a desire to shift from rocket to ground operations. The new tactic focuses on ground operations, which have long been used by other Palestinian resistance forces and were later adopted by Hezbollah. This tactic depends on the element of surprise in attacking military locations. The most significant operation by Hamas from Gaza targeted an Israeli military base at the Qaram Abu Salem crossing in June 2006. The attackers succeeded in taking Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit hostage. In the Nahal Oz operation, or the previous attack, Hamas utilized an underground tunnel to reach an Israeli military base before the clashes erupted with the Israeli troops. The 4 Palestinian fighters from Hamas died in the operation, as well as 3 Israeli soldiers. The element of surprise also played a part in the recent Qaram Abu Salam operation, which resulted in 13 Israeli soldiers being injured. These kinds of armed operations resemble the methods adopted by the Lebanese resistance military operations in the south of Lebanon against Israeli targets in the 80s and 90s, as well as the operation that preceded the war in July 2006. This supports the notion that both Hamas and Hezbollah have received training at the hands of the Al-Quds battalion of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It also supports the opinion that Hamas members who have received this kind of training were able to enter Gaza through Egypt amidst the chaos accompanying the collapse of the fence at the Rafah border last winter.
العربية.
وكان الزهار قد أكد خلال مؤتمر صحفي عقده في القاهرة أن وفد.
During a press conference in Cairo, Mahmoud al-Zahar, a leader of Hamas, said that the Hamas delegation will not return to Gaza until the siege against the Palestinian people is lifted.
وأبعاده الإجرامية على الشعب التي طالت الخبز.
We also talked about the unjust siege and the political objectives behind it. We discussed the criminal nature of this siege, which affects the Palestinians' daily lives and their access to bread, medicine, and milk. Truly, the situation in Gaza is tragic, and I want to send a message, and I do not want to give baseless reassurances. God willing, we will not go back to Gaza before we end the siege on our people and stop the Israeli aggression in all of its forms. Our brothers in Egypt are understanding and support us on this issue.
Az-Zahar explained after his meeting with the former President Jimmy Carter that Hamas is a liberation movement with the aim of resisting the occupation. He also praised Carter's positive position towards the Palestinian plight.
Israeli and Zionist pressures were exerted on Carter to prevent him from meeting with Hamas and other Palestinian resistance movements. By meeting with us, he confirms that Hamas is a liberation movement, and we talked about this. The meeting also legitimizes the resistance movement and honors the election results. We talked about the Rafah crossing point. We also explained what the Hamas movement is about, and we reiterated that it is a national liberation movement and that none of the controversial definitions of terrorism apply to it. The issue of Lebanese prisoners in Syrian jails is as large as the nation itself, but it is represented by a solitary tent in Riyad al-Sulu Square. The details with Riyad al-Kubasi.
ثلاثة أعوام على انسحاب القوات السورية من لبنان ولم تنسحب بعد مآثر هذه القوات.
3 years have passed since the withdrawal of Syrian troops from Lebanon, but their effects are still lingering. 3 years have also passed since the families of the prisoners set up their tent. They want to know the truth about those who went missing in prisons, from which some have come out alive.
الداخل إليها مفقود والخارج منها مولود.
The stories of these prisoners' families are too many for one report. They call their young men's kidnappers by name, some of whom are prominent. The afflicted parents hold back their tears. Their hopes are renewed only when a prisoner is released, the last of whom was defendant Milad Barakat.
الأمل الذي لا يستيقظ إلا مع كل إفراج جديد، والمرة الأخيرة كانت مع المدعو ميلاد بركات.
هلا ما أهمية الإفراج عن ميلاد بركات؟
What is the importance of releasing Milad Barakat? The importance is that it refutes the official position to the Joint Lebanese-Syrian Committee. The committee has said that the list given to it was false, and that none of those listed are in Syrian prisons. Then suddenly, Milad, who was one of the names on the list, was released. Earlier in December 2005, another prisoner named George Shalawit was released. He was also on the list, and the Syrians were denying that he was in their jails. This is why the release is important.
فإذن أهمية الإفراج هي هاي النقطة.
Every mother, sister, and wife has hopes, stories, and people to blame.
He had a disagreement with a Secret Service agent. They came for my son, or nephew, and they caught my son by his hand. In the beginning, they didn't know what the story was about. I thought it was over a girl. One thing led to another, and then the Syrian took out a gun, and the Syrian was killed. My nephew came out, so why not my son? He has to come out too.
They accused him of killing a Syrian with a vehicle. How could he kill him when he doesn't even know how to ride a bicycle?
I saw her sons, Ghassan Abdu and Fadi Abdu, from the town of Masha'Allah. How is it possible for me not to miss my son? We go to sleep and we wake up thinking of him.
We asked for an international committee, but no one listened. Why? Does a person have to die before they call for a national committee to be formed?
I address Mr. Hassan Nasrallah and tell him I want my sons back alive. And I address Abdelamir Kablan, the head of the Shiites. I turn to him. I address Nabiya Biri to just look at the pain of the mothers here. We've been suffering for 3 years in this tent. Have some mercy. I address Senora and ask him why he's not taking up the mothers' cases.
All of them are scared, from the highest figures to the lowest. In the past 22 years, I have knocked on every door looking for him.
We might not even see him after we're dead. We're not Syrians, and so we get no mercy. May God soften their hearts and teach them kindness towards all these young men they have shunned underground. May God give them kindness.
An imprisoned tent stands between the opposition and Esqua, It asks for its young men who have been imprisoned behind cells with chains of forgetfulness and abandonment. From outside the tent of the families of the prisoners in Syrian jails, this is Riyad Kubaisi, New TV.
رياض باسي قناة الجديد.
صدر لا تزال مسرحا لمعارك عنيفة وإن بمسميات مختلفة.
Sadr city continues to be a stage for violent battles, regardless of how they are named. Today, in the Shiite city, 11 people were killed and more than 30 were injured, including women and children. The U.S. Army described the casualties as criminals who were aiming rockets at the coalition forces. Meanwhile, the unannounced Western visits to Iraq in order to add pressure on al-Maliki also continue. The latest of such visits was by British Foreign Minister David Miliband, who met with Noor al-Maliki. The two discussed several issues, including security and British investment in Iraq. There are many aspects to the situation in Iraq, one of which is that of the students, who spend most of their time outside the classroom due to the violence that seldom subsides. Reaching the end of the school year, even with the least amount of education, has in itself become an accomplishment in general. This is especially the case in places that lack security, including Assad in Baghdad, which in the last month has witnessed the most violent clashes in years. Jamal reports.
The girls come out of their classes calmly, without the customary excitement accompanying the time to leave school, everywhere else in the world. The official time to leave school has not come yet, but the renewal of clashes in the surrounding areas has forced them to leave early. This scenario repeats itself almost every day in the schools of Sadr city and has become the norm. The opposite is an exception.
The services are bad and the situation is not good at all. We wake up and go to sleep to the sound of explosions.
Hundreds of thousands of Iraq students share this problem in common. According to the Iraqi Ministry of Education, enrollment in elementary schools has dropped to less than 46% in 2006. This grim picture is echoed by UNICEF, which said that 220,000 children of elementary school age were displaced from their homes last year. Of those, more than two-thirds were not able to continue their education in the places they took refuge, thus joining the 760,000 students who did not enroll in school at all. The violence of adults did away with food, medicine, safety, and security. It also did away with children's right to an education. In a country that praises the light of knowledge, the road leading towards it has been lost.
في بلد ينشد النور ولكنه لا يعرف طريقا إليه.
Election polling locations opened their doors today in more than 100 Iranian cities for the second round of the country's legislative elections, during which 28 parliamentarians will be elected. Conservatives received the majority of votes in the first round of elections that took place on March 14th, and it is expected that they will receive the same result in the second round. Competing in this round are 12 women out of a total of 164 candidates.
بدأ الناخبون الإيرانيون لإدلاء بأصواتهم في الدورة الثانية من الانتخابات.
Iranian citizens began voting for the 120 remaining parliamentary seats in the second round of elections. The results of these elections are not expected to have much of an effect on the parliament, which will be controlled by the conservatives, who already won more than 150 out of 290 parliamentary seats. Joining us from Tehran is our reporter Mulhem Raya, providing us with more details about these elections. Mulhem, what is the general feeling of Iranian voters in the second round of elections?
ملحم ما هو الاتجاه العام للناخب الإيراني في هذه الدورة؟
بداية الحبيب عملية الاقتراع تسير بشكل سلس حتى الآن مع بعض الخروقات.
First of all, Brother Habib, the elections have been running smoothly. There were some violations pertaining to the way in which political funds have been utilized to influence voters. Some individuals have been detained for using money to bribe in elections booth. We have not seen a large turnout since the early hours of the morning, like the ones we have seen during the first round of elections. This is the case for many reasons, some of which are that the second round of elections will not have much of an effect since the conservatives overwhelmingly won the first round of the elections. The second reason has to do with a difficult economic situation inside Iran and the political polarization within the Ahmadinejad's government as well as among the conservatives and the reformists. This polarization was evident after the first round of elections. There are different analyses on whether the reformers will win or lose the second round of elections. The reformers have won a significant number of seats in the second round. The economic problems work to their advantage as well as the division among conservatives. Some people, however, reiterated that the conservatives will win this round of elections, saying that while the reformers tend to win when the election turnout is large, conservatives tend to win when the turnout is low. The reformers are betting on the economic problems in Iran and the division among the conservatives. They hope to win the votes of those who criticize the performance of President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's government, both at the economic and political levels. The reformers may not win the parliamentary elections, but they reiterated that they will manage to form an opposition front to government policies.
We thank our reporter from Tehran, Mulham Raya.
The Iranians are less interested in going to the election booth to cast their votes in the second round of elections than they were in the first round. Although large numbers of people participated in the elections, the results will not change the parliament. The conservatives already won more than half of the parliament seats in the first round of the elections.
Of course I know that the elections will not change the parliament, but I want to express my support of female candidates. I ask that women's conditions be improved.
Iranian officials are trying to increase participation so that it can be used to legitimize the regime in the psychological warfare with the United States, or what Tehran refers to as the regime's enemies.
This round of elections is as important as the previous one. We have the same responsibility and excitement as we had in the first round, which will lead to serious participation by the people.
This explains why Mahmoud Ahmadinejad reiterated the importance of participating in the elections. However, the Iranian people care more about the economy than politics. The economic conditions are getting harder as people are facing tougher times making a living. Those who boycotted the second round of elections attributed the reason behind their decision to the difficult economic conditions that have been shaking Iran. These economic problems were not resolved in the past by changing the parliament, despite promises made by Ahmadinejad. In fact, his government is suffering from a lack of confidence after 9 ministers were either fired or resigned, including the interior minister and the minister of the economy.
I did not go to the elections because I did not think it would make a difference. What happened here is planned in advance.
I did not participate because I think that the elections will not affect inflation or resolve the economic problems.
It seems that the recent polarization between the president of the executive branch, Ahmadinejad, and the head of the legislative authority, Haddad Adil, who will lead the largest party in the parliament, will increase the hopes of the reformers. They hope that more people will begin criticizing the government, which has been trying in the last year of its term to improve its image, which was destroyed by the inflation and political domination. Mulham Raya, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
The US claims that North Korea is helping Syria build a nuclear reactor. The Syrians claim that the Israeli Prime Minister has made an offer to withdraw from the Golan Heights. Is there truth in any of these reports? And why would Assad make overtures for peace? Answers to these questions and more on Link TV's Mosaic Intelligence Report.
This week, Syria made news headlines not once, but twice. One headline implicated it in enriching uranium and involved the CIA confirming to Congress that the target of a mysterious Israeli air raid in northern Syria on September 6, 2007 was a reactor built with North Korean help.
The story is not accurate at all of the Washington Post. They just show a building and they say, look, this building is in a secret location in the Syrian desert, and yet these photos were taken by a commercial satellite service. And when I noted to them that this supposedly strategic building of Syria does not have a single security guard around it, no barbed wires, no anti-aircraft missiles, no security whatsoever, I told them, isn't that a little bit strange for a strategic building, a nuclear reactor that is supposed to produce plutonium? They didn't have an answer.
The second headline, which in my opinion is the most intriguing one, was about a claim recently made by the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad that Ehud Olmert, Israel's prime minister, has made an offer to withdraw from Syria's Golan Heights in exchange for a peace deal with Damascus. Direct and indirect peace negotiations between Syria and Israel are not something new. In 1991, Syrian and Israeli officials confronted each other at the Madrid Peace Conference, exchanging charges and accusations. Then there were the formal US-sponsored Israel-Syria talks, which nearly resulted in an agreement in 2000, but broke down over final border and peace arrangements. But what's different about these new peace overtures is the fact that they are being done through the media.
If we want to take Syria out of the axis of evil and to strengthen the axis of peace and to get on the path of peace with the Palestinians and the Arab nations, we will have to give back the Golan Heights. It is not simple. It is not easy. I know the significance of it, but in exchange for true peace with Syria and overall peace with the Arabs, I think we are better off with this option than not having peace and have the Golan Heights.
First, the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad appeared on Syrian national television, hinting about talks taking place through a third party. Shortly after, the Syrian newspaper Al-Watan reports that the Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan called the Syrian president and informed him of Olmert's willingness to fully withdraw from the Golan Heights in exchange for a peace agreement. A day later, Buthayna Sha'ban, Syria's Minister for Expatriate Affairs, spoke about the offer on Al Jazeera.
The Turkish Prime Minister told the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad that Olmert is ready for peace with Syria, based on international agreements and the full return of the Golan Heights to Syria.
If you are familiar with Syrian media like I am, you may worry about what the Syrian government might have omitted or censored. But in this case, they have been going out of their way to leak news of Ankara's efforts to facilitate a deal on the Golan. Does Assad want to distract the world from revelations in Washington about his ties to North Korea? Was the mysterious liquidation of Hezbollah's Imad Mughniya in Damascus Assad's way of signaling a readiness to break with Hassan Nasrallah and Iran? Or was it the utter failure of the Arab Summit, which was marked by snubs by leaders of regional heavyweights, Saudi Arabia and Egypt? I believe it's the latter. Al-Assad, or the Lion in English, has decided to follow the route of the late Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and play it solo, away from those who have shunned and isolated him. The only obstacle is Iran. But again, following Sadat's model, it seems that Bashar al-Assad is willing to join the American camp in the Middle East by talking to Turkey and Israel. Will Assad forsake his benefactor, Iran? I'm Jamal Dajani for the Mosaic Intelligence Report. To learn more about this program or to share your thoughts, visit us at linktv.org/mosaic.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.